What if I told you that, quietly, without malice or even awareness, you might be steering the emotions and decisions of those you care about, twisting interactions to suit your comfort, shaping others' reactions through subtle pressure? It may sound dramatic, but in countless relationships, a hidden pattern emerges. One individual inadvertently enforces emotional control over another, channeling the flow of affection, attention, or decision-making to maintain a sense of safety, status, or reassurance. Even the gentlest among us can fall prey to these tactics, all the while insisting, "I'm only doing what's best for everyone," or "I'm just expressing my feelings." Yet deep inside, illusions lurk. Illusions that let us justify behaviors which, seen from another angle, verge on manipulation or emotional coercion. The sobering truth is that we can often manipulate without conscious intent, fueled by fear, pride, or desire for validation. And in a world overloaded with advice on how to take control or ensure your needs are met, it's easy to slip into controlling others in ways we barely recognize. Now, if you are new here, please like the video and subscribe. Statistics show that only 15% of my audience is subscribed to the channel. So, if this content has helped you in any way, I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. But why should you care to shine light on such hidden patterns? Because if you ignore these unseen signs of emotional control, you risk eroding trust, snuffing out genuine connection, and harming both your partner's or friend's sense of autonomy and your own integrity. Over time, people sense they're being guided or cornered in ways that feel stifling. Resentment brews, hidden or overt. The relationship loses authenticity, replaced by a veneer of forced harmony or repressed frustration. Then you wonder why closeness falters, or why conflicts intensify. By identifying the subtle ways you might be controlling another's emotional space, you open a path to deeper respect and mutual flourishing. A path that Stoic philosophy, among others, has championed for centuries. Today, we'll delve into this theme: the 7 unseen signs you're emotionally controlling others, exploring them through the lens of ancient Stoicism and other relevant philosophies. By the end, you'll not only recognize these hidden signs, but also gain Stoic tools to uproot them, forging healthier, freer bonds with the people in your life. Why trust this approach? Because these insights don't come from superficial tips or manipulative strategies. They stem from a worldview that has guided thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius through personal and political storms, insisting on reason, humility, and moral virtue as the backbone of human interaction. I speak now as an older voice, one who has seen how illusions can quietly distort even the purest intentions, and how Stoic clarity can restore authenticity and shared respect. Let's outline our roadmap. First, we'll craft a vivid, storytelling-style introduction that captures the essence of these unseen signs, hooking your curiosity about how easily we can slip into controlling modes without noticing. Then, in 3 large sections, each about 5,000 words, we'll explore these hidden patterns in a single, cohesive narrative, with minimal headings but a clear progression. We'll weave Stoic principles throughout, showing how illusions of control or fear drive each sign, and how daily Stoic reflection, acceptance, empathy, and moral focus can correct them. Finally, we'll unify these insights into a living strategy for everyday life, ensuring you're not just aware of these signs but equipped to transform your conduct and protect the dignity of those you care about. This approach, reminiscent of an elder Stoic's patient counsel, aims for paragraphs that flow together in a video script style, hooking your attention while guiding you gently. Now, before we start, let's set the stage with an anecdote. Imagine a tranquil courtyard at dusk. An old friend confides in me, describing how his partner or close friend seems withdrawn. At first, he blames them for being moody or ungrateful, but as we talk further, I discern a quiet pattern. He's been steering the emotional climate, ensuring that every conversation tilts toward his preferences, shaping their responses with guilt-laden remarks, or overshadowing their opinions with well-timed frowns or dismissive shrugs. He never named it control, but day by day, the other person felt cornered, their emotional range compressed. Realizing this, he flushes with guilt and confusion. He meant no harm, he says, but wanted them to see things his way. That confusion is exactly why these controlling tactics remain unseen. Illusions cloak them in the guise of caring or reasonableness, preventing us from acknowledging that we are restricting another's emotional freedom. So let's begin, friend, as the older Stoic. I'll walk you through 7 hidden signals that you might be stepping into that emotional controlling role, even with the best intentions. We'll examine each sign's typical illusions, like, I'm only expressing my feelings, or I'm helping them see what's best for them, while unraveling how Stoic reasoning counters those illusions by focusing on real empathy, respect for autonomy, and calm acceptance of differences. As we proceed, keep an open mind. You might recognize your own subtle behaviors, or recall times others used them on you. By naming these signs and seeing them clearly, you gain the power to free your relationships from the choking vines of manipulation, ushering in an orchard of sincere dialogue and moral growth. Let me begin with a short reflection on why Stoicism merges so well with this subject. Stoics champion the idea that while we can shape our actions and judgments, we cannot, and should not, forcibly control others' minds or emotions. Each person's will is their own domain. Attempts to orchestrate it typically spawn illusions, like the belief you can make someone see or feel precisely what you want. This illusions-based controlling approach might yield short-term compliance, but in the long haul, it dismantles mutual respect. Meanwhile, Stoics emphasize reason, humility, and focusing on what belongs to your power, your comportment, your moral stance, your sincere offering of perspective. If we deviate from that stance, we wade into emotional control, stepping on the lines of autonomy, often unconsciously. So, these 7 unseen signs are basically ways illusions distort Stoic boundaries. Let's keep that in mind as we unspool each sign in depth, weaving a consistent narrative across 3 large parts. In the rest of this initial portion, we'll set a foundation for how emotional control arises from illusions, how Stoic reflection recognizes it, and how adopting a caretaker approach to relationships fosters empathy and independence rather than control. Think of it as an orchard caretaker analogy once again. Each relationship can be a separate orchard we maintain with a partner or friend. If illusions lead us to meddle excessively with how they respond or feel, we overshadow their growth. Stoicism guides us to keep the orchard healthy by tending our side, our honesty, our calm posture, our readiness to hear them, without overshadowing their natural independence. Then, in part 2 and 3, we'll unravel the specifics sign by sign, showing how illusions might slip into daily behaviors. By the end, you'll see how Stoic discipline can keep you from crossing that line into manipulative patterns. So let's quietly transition into the deeper narrative now. Shaping the tale of illusions that feed emotional control, and how Stoic vigilance sets you free. I remember a younger me, decades past, who believed that strong persuasion was a virtue. If I could craft the right words, the right emotional cues, I thought I could help a friend see the wisdom of a certain path. But in that quest, I sometimes used guilt or subtle pressure. If they hesitated, I'd throw in a lament. I guess you don't trust me, or clearly you're not committed. That tactic, while I saw it then as mild, is a hallmark of emotional control. Indeed, illusions told me, I'm only highlighting the truth. In Stoic retrospect, I see I was pushing them into corners, overshadowing their autonomy. My orchard might have thrived from my vantage, but I was ignoring how I was overshadowing their portion of the orchard. Over time, that friend withdrew, politely but firmly. It took Stoic study for me to see how illusions had disguised controlling behaviors as caring counsel. Freed from illusions, I recognized the necessity of respectful boundaries, an acceptance that each person must decide for themselves, uncoerced, unmanipulated by subtle cues. My role, stoically, is to offer reasoned perspective, not to manipulate. That revelation changed how I approach conversation to this day. Now, illusions typically revolve around fear, validation, or an overblown sense of responsibility. Fear says, if I don't nudge them emotionally, we'll lose closeness, or they'll make a foolish choice. Validation says, I need them to affirm my stance or I'll feel insecure. Overblown responsibility says, I must shape their decisions for their own good. All these illusions yield emotional control tactics that remain largely unseen because they feel normal or even loving. For instance, using tears or anger to corner them into agreement, or layering guilt-laced remarks so they comply to avoid upset. Stoics, on the other hand, root themselves in honesty and empathy, never force. If your partner or friend chooses differently, you accept that outcome with composure. That is the orchard caretaker's stance. You nurture by providing resources or perspective, not by controlling the natural direction of the other's growth. Perhaps you're starting to see how illusions can quietly infiltrate your relationship. You might say, but I only express how I feel. If it makes them do what I want, isn't that their choice? Possibly, but Stoics ask whether you're intentionally or unconsciously pressuring them, like laying emotional burdens so heavy they can't choose freely. If your partner fears you'll sulk for days or punish them silently whenever they disagree, illusions have let you become controlling. They comply out of dread or guilt, not genuine conviction. Over time, that compliance fosters resentment or stifles authenticity. Stoic reflection helps you see the difference between healthy emotional expression. I feel sad about your decision, but I respect your autonomy. And manipulative expression. I'm sad. Look how you're hurting me. Subtext, you must do as I say to fix my sadness. One fosters open communication, the other fosters control. Only illusions keep us from discerning which side we're on. Another dimension is illusions about conflict resolution. Some controlling individuals misuse confrontation, accusing or demanding, to push emotional levers. They imagine Stoic virtue means being firm or in charge, conflating emotional standoffs with moral righteousness. But Stoics caution that true firmness is about moral principle, not manipulation. If illusions prompt you to wield your anger or silent treatment so the other person yields, that's emotional control masquerading as strength. Instead, Stoics propose reasoned conversation, stating your perspective calmly, acknowledging their viewpoint and not resorting to emotional blackmail. The orchard caretaker analogy reappears. You prune a branch not by tearing it violently, but by mindful cutting, ensuring minimal harm while protecting the orchard. In relationships, you address conflicts with measured words, not illusions of, I must crush their dissent to preserve harmony. Real harmony can't be forced. It arises from mutual respect. We might ask, but can't I encourage someone if I see them making poor choices? Indeed, Stoics don't say be passive. You can lovingly advise or set boundaries if their actions harm you. The difference is your approach. If illusions push you to steer them through guilt or overshadow them with intense emotional displays, that's controlling. If Stoic logic leads you to offer reason, share concerns, and accept their final stance, that's supportive. The orchard caretaker sees a friend's orchard having issues. They offer suggestions or resources, but do not forcibly invade or overshadow the other orchard. The line can be subtle, which is why illusions often keep it hidden. Your daily Stoic reflection, scanning for manipulative impulses or guilt-laden dialogues, becomes the safeguard. Over repeated reflection, you refine your style, ensuring your counsel is helpful, not manipulative. Now, let's mention illusions about protecting them from themselves. Many controlling behaviors arise from paternalistic illusions. They can't handle the truth, so I'll shape their emotions or nudge them with half-truths for their own good. Stoics challenge that paternalism. Each adult, if mentally sound, has the right to make their own calls, even if they differ from your notion of wise. If illusions lead you to hide relevant details, spread guilt, or otherwise manipulate them out of protection, you undercut their autonomy. The orchard caretaker cannot forcibly rearrange the other orchard's layout, calling it help. The Stoic approach fosters open honesty, disclaiming illusions that you must orchestrate their emotional responses. By showing respect for their independence, you build deeper trust. If they do err, Stoic empathy means you remain supportive, not controlling. That's the difference between illusions and real care. Finally, illusions can twist your sense of identity. I'm the stable one. I must guide them or they'll flounder. This self-concept might feed emotional control tactics because you see yourself as the hero or savior. Stoicism brings humility, reminding us each has vulnerabilities. No one is infallible. If illusions feed your savior complex, you might manipulate others' emotions to keep them reliant on you. A Stoic steps back. Yes, I can help, but I must not overshadow their agency. Freed from illusions, you realize your orchard is best shared with others who also stand on their own, not forcibly overshadowed by your supposed stability. Paradoxically, this fosters more genuine closeness, for the other person remains an equal moral agent, not a project or subordinate. As we near the end of this first portion, we pivot toward the bigger story. How each of the 7 unseen signs of emotional control emerges in daily life, how illusions sustain them, and how Stoic reflection counters them. In the next segments, we'll walk through these signs in detail, from guilt-tripping disguised as sincerity to overshadowing subtle disagreements, from manipulative boundary crossing to forced vulnerability. Each sign becomes clearer once you adopt a Stoic vantage. Is my action honoring their autonomy or overshadowing it? Am I swayed by illusions that this is for their own good, or that I have no choice? Because illusions love half-light. They vanish under direct Stoic scrutiny. Meanwhile, you remain the orchard caretaker, each day scanning for controlling impulses, each day reaffirming that your domain is your reasoned stance, not another's emotional compliance. My final anecdote to close this part. Not long ago, a young friend recognized that his repeated helpful suggestions to his spouse were laced with undertones of blame if she didn't follow them. He insisted it was just him caring, but illusions masked the subtle manipulation. Over time, she withdrew, feeling smothered. Only when Stoic reflection prompted him to observe her orchard, her right to handle tasks or choices her way, did he quell illusions. He apologized for overshadowing her autonomy, resolved to offer suggestions only once, calmly, and accept if she declined. Freed from illusions, their bond improved, because she felt respected, not steered. That real-life shift embodies the Stoic principle. Illusions obscure the line between help and control. With illusions lifted, you honor each other's freedom, forging a connection that thrives on sincerity, not subtle dominance. Now we transition to the next chapters, where we'll dissect the 7 signs more thoroughly in the context of illusions and Stoic remedies. We'll detail how each sign creeps into everyday conversation, how illusions disguise it as normal or loving, and how Stoic reflection dethrones illusions, ensuring your approach fosters autonomy and trust. For now, reflect on these overarching insights. Illusions about your duty to fix, illusions about your right to manipulate, illusions about them needing your direction. These birth emotional control. Stoicism lifts illusions by focusing on moral reason, daily reflection, and acceptance that while you can influence others kindly, you cannot and must not control their emotional realm. The orchard caretaker, mindful of boundaries, can remain caring without overshadowing. That's the heart of Stoic wisdom in relationships, especially relevant when suspecting or confronting emotional control, however subtle. Let us step further into the specifics next, unveiling the 7 hidden signals that illusions have you controlling others, so we can dissolve them with Stoic clarity. I recall one evening in a quiet courtyard lined with flickering lanterns, receiving a visitor in evident turmoil. He spoke of how his partner seemed perpetually uncertain and anxious around him, yet he couldn't fathom why. He prided himself on being honest in how he expressed disappointment or frustration. But in the course of our talk, subtle patterns emerged. Every time she tried to share her viewpoint, he'd interject with pointed remarks about how people who truly care would do things differently. Though he thought he was just being authentic, in truth, he was imposing emotional guardrails that forced her to comply to avoid guilt. It never crossed his mind that this was emotional control. To him, it felt like genuine sincerity. Only a Stoic lens revealed that illusions about helping her see the truth disguised a manipulative dynamic. Over weeks, he realized how, bit by bit, he was steering her emotions to align with his comfort zone. In the preceding chapter, we touched on illusions as the bedrock of all hidden controlling behaviors. We said illusions often arise from fear, validation seeking, or a desire for unwavering assurance. Stoic philosophy counters illusions with reason, moral grounding, and acceptance of limits to our dominion over others. Now, we pivot to examine more thoroughly those unseen signs, painting each with a story-like example, capturing how illusions prop them up and how Stoic reflection can uproot them. Together, these signs form a progression, from subtle rhetorical tactics that guilt or corner someone, to larger-scale overshadowing that robs them of emotional independence. By naming them, we gain the power to do what illusions forbid: adjust, apologize if needed, and adopt a new stance of genuine respect. The orchard metaphor remains. Each time you slip into controlling behaviors, you overshadow another orchard, preventing it from growing naturally. Stoics hold that true collaboration means each orchard thrives side by side, connected by mutual understanding, not overshadowed by illusions of, I must make them align with me. If you see yourself in these signs, do not despair. Stoicism is not about condemnation, but calm introspection. Illusions can infiltrate the best of intentions, and only through reflection can we cast them out. So let us unfold each sign in a single, long narrative approach, weaving it into our Stoic tapestry. 1. The guilt-laden remark. We begin with the subtle use of guilt to shape someone's emotions or choices. Picture a scenario. Your friend declines an invitation to help with a personal project. Instead of acknowledging their reason or calmly suggesting an alternative, you respond, I see. Guess I'm the only one who cares about this cause. Or, I hoped you'd have my back, but I guess I'm alone. On the surface, it sounds like an expression of hurt, but Stoic analysis shows it's loaded with a guilt attempt. You aim to create emotional unease in them, prompting a reversal of their choice or an apology that leads to compliance. This is rarely recognized as control, because illusions might say you're just being honest about your disappointment. Yet, from a Stoic vantage, you're placing your emotional reaction in their hands, implying, unless you do what I want, you're failing me. The orchard caretaker approach would encourage you to say, I'm disappointed you can't help, but I respect your choice. Let me know if anything changes, or if you'd like to connect in a different way. That approach is honest, acknowledging sorrow but not pressuring them to fix your feelings. Illusions claim that turning up guilt is a valid tactic to secure help or prove loyalty. But Stoic reason sees it as overshadowing the other orchard's freedom. If illusions are fueling guilt-laden remarks, Stoic daily reflection can catch you. Did I phrase my disappointment in a way that manipulated them, or did I express it calmly? Over time, you shift from illusions about forcing their cooperation to acceptance that they must choose freely, even if it means losing a bit of assistance. Freed from illusions, you preserve your orchard's integrity and let them remain an independent agent. 2. The silent punishment. A second sign lurks in how you handle disagreements or boundaries. Some individuals, upon hearing a refusal or a difference of opinion, resort to silent withdrawal or cold aloofness, a form of punishing the other person emotionally. Let's say your partner chooses to spend time with friends instead of you one weekend. If illusions drive you, you might respond with sullen silences, minimal responses, or a subtle air of disapproval. You effectively punish them for their choice without direct confrontation. They sense your displeasure, your illusions pressing them to reconsider their autonomy next time, simply to avoid your silent wrath. Stoicism calls this out as illusions of control. You're not openly stating your feelings or reasoned concerns, so you're using emotional distance as a lever. Aurelius or Seneca would say it violates honest communication, replacing it with a quiet coercion that fosters resentment. The orchard caretaker, if he's upset about how the other orchard decided to allocate resources, addresses it openly, or, if not crucial, accepts it with grace. Illusions, on the contrary, push you to manipulate them through your quiet scorn. Over time, they feel compelled to comply, or they grow weary of your unpredictability. Stoic reflection each evening helps you see if you engaged in silent punishment out of illusions that they must guess my hurt, or I can't be direct or I'll lose moral high ground. Freed from illusions, you either state your concern calmly or accept their decision. That authenticity fosters a deeper respect, whether or not they accommodate your preference. 3. The interrupting help or advice overload. A more subtle sign arises when you constantly interrupt your partner or friend to offer help or advice, overshadowing their chance to discover their own stance. Initially, this can appear caring. Illusions say you're guiding them. But in truth, you're controlling the emotional tenor of discussions, cutting short their thoughts. For instance, they start venting about a work issue, and illusions lead you to jump in with solutions, dismissing their feelings or nuance. Over time, they learn that your orchard's overshadowing branches leave no sunlight for their orchard to breathe. They might comply with your suggestions out of habit or to avoid a conflict, but resentment quietly grows. Stoics emphasize reasoned conversation, not bulldozing. If illusions push you to cut them off, you're effectively controlling the emotional flow. The orchard caretaker approach would be: let them share fully, ask clarifying questions, offer suggestions only after ensuring you understand. Freed from illusions that you must always fix or lead, you respect their autonomy. Each day, Stoic reflection might ask, did I truly listen or overshadow them with immediate advice? If illusions fueled overshadowing, you vow next time to withhold your fix-it approach until they explicitly want it. You see, illusions about your brilliance or paternal need to direct them hamper their orchard's development. Stoic acceptance says they might find their own solution, or at least deserve the space to articulate it. That fosters more trusting communication. 4. The emotional scoreboard. Consider a pattern where you frequently keep track of who did what emotional favor, who comforted whom more, or who owes whom. This scoreboard can be an unseen sign of controlling the emotional climate. For example, illusions might tell you, I listened to their problems twice this week, so they must attend to my every whim now. If they decline, illusions cause you to label them ungrateful. This scoreboard logic effectively compels the other person to match your emotional demands to avoid being labeled as failing the scoreboard. Stoics refute this mindset by stressing that acts of kindness or support are done from virtue, not from illusions that place you in the driver's seat of their reciprocation. An anecdote might be a friend who insists, I've done so much for you. Why won't you do X for me? On the surface, it sounds fair, but illusions overshadow it. You're controlling them by referencing a ledger of emotional debts. The orchard caretaker doesn't track every instance of watering or weeding to hold the orchard hostage. They do it because it's necessary, or because caring for the orchard is a moral stance. Freed from illusions of the scoreboard, you might still hope for mutual support, but you address it openly. I appreciate when we help each other. Lately, I feel the exchange is unbalanced. Can we talk about that? You do not guilt them with a ledger. You rationally open conversation. That approach is Stoic clarity, replacing illusions of debt-based emotional control. Chapter 5. The conditional love or approval. 5th, watch for conditional expressions of love or approval that hinge on them conforming to your desires. This might appear in statements like, I don't know if I can keep loving someone who won't do X, or If you were truly loyal, you'd see it my way. On the surface, illusions might say you're clarifying boundaries. But Stoics see a difference between healthy boundaries and emotional blackmail. If illusions prompt you to link your affection or respect to their compliance, you overshadow them. They sense the orchard's sunlight is withheld unless they align with your script. Over time, that fosters either compliance born of fear or a slow withering of genuine connection. Stoic acceptance means you can set boundaries for your well-being, like not tolerating abuse or constant disrespect. But illusions about linking your entire love or acceptance to minor disagreements is controlling. If illusions whisper, threatening to withhold love is the only way to make them change, Stoic reflection counters. No, true change arises from open dialogue, not a hostage tactic on affection. Freed from illusions, you might say, I'm hurt by your action, it conflicts with my values, but I still care about you. Let's see if we can address this. That tone conveys real concern. If illusions remain, you might declare, unless you do exactly X, I'll withdraw emotionally forever. The orchard caretaker fosters growth with consistent sun and water, not yanking it away to coerce compliance. You might still choose to leave a relationship if big moral differences persist, but illusions do not push you to brandish conditional love as a daily manipulative tool. You have now reached the halfway mark of the video. I congratulate you for trying to become a better version of yourself, and I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day," so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. 6. The subtle threat or ultimatum. Closely related is the use of subtle threats or ultimatums. If you don't move in with me, I guess this is over. Or, if you're not going to prioritize me over that friend, maybe we shouldn't bother. Stoic Vantage sees that illusions about your right to direct their choices fuel these threats. You might feel anxious that your bond is at risk if they choose something else. But illusions push you to phrase it as an ultimatum, cornering them with fear. If illusions didn't hamper you, you'd express your stance calmly. It's important to me we live closer. If that's not something you want, we may need to discuss the future. That difference is subtle but vital. Ultimatums carry a controlling edge, while Stoic directness clarifies your boundaries without illusions that you can or must force them. Consider a man who repeatedly issues low-key ultimatums. I can't see myself continuing if you keep traveling so often. The illusions are that his partner's traveling must be squashed, else the relationship fails. Meanwhile, Stoics would approach it as, I feel disconnected when you're away so often. Is there a middle ground we can find? If not, we might have to reassess. That second approach doesn't overshadow them. It acknowledges your needs, invites negotiation, yet doesn't disguise illusions of forcibly rewriting their life. Freed from illusions, you stand ready to accept the orchard's new shape, or to part if fundamental differences remain. But illusions of the ultimatum hamper free dialogue, fostering resentment or forced compliance, both lethal to real closeness. 7. Overriding their emotional narratives. Finally, watch if you frequently override or minimize their emotional accounts. For instance, if they express frustration, you respond with, "You're overreacting," or "That's not a big deal. Calm down," forcibly dictating how they should feel. While illusions might label it as just telling them reality, Stoics see that each orchard has its subjective experience. Overriding their emotional narrative is controlling. You impose your lens, leaving them feeling invalidated or coerced into compliance with your emotional script. Over time, they might stop sharing honest feelings, leading to silent frustration. Stoic discipline fosters empathy. If illusions lead you to dismiss their sorrow or anger as trivial, you hamper genuine dialogue. A Stoic alternative acknowledges, "I hear your frustration. Let's see if we can address it." You might hold a different view of the severity, but illusions do not push you to rewrite their emotional narrative forcibly. Freed from illusions, you can calmly share your perspective. "I see it differently, but I respect you feel strongly," inviting conversation rather than overshadowing them. The orchard caretaker, seeing differences in how a neighboring orchard experiences sunlight or water, doesn't forcibly judge it as overreacting. They adapt, or they talk, or they set boundaries if it severely conflicts. But illusions of rewriting their emotional stance hamper mutual respect, creeping in as a controlling behavior disguised as rational guidance. Connecting the dots with Stoic remedies. Now that we've named these 7 unseen signs: guilt-laden remarks, silent punishment, interrupting help, the emotional scoreboard, conditional love, subtle threats, and overriding emotional narratives, let's unify them under Stoic reflection. Each sign is fueled by illusions about your right or need to shape the other's emotional realm. Each can be systematically dismantled through daily Stoic steps. 1. Morning resolve. Affirm you cannot and must not forcibly direct another's emotions. Remind yourself your domain is your moral stance, your words, not their compliance. If illusions arise, you vow to handle them with rational conversation, not manipulative tactics. 2nd midday check. Ask if any of your words or gestures veered into controlling territory, like guilt-tripping or overshadowing them with advice. If illusions spurred these behaviors, you can quickly apologize or clarify. That immediate correction stops illusions from festering. 3rd evening reflection. Review interactions. Did illusions lead you to a scoreboard approach, or to withhold approval unless they conformed? If so, note it calmly and vow a better approach next day. This cyclical reflection is how illusions gradually lose power, each day's mistakes corrected before they harden into habit. 4. Empathy plus autonomy. In each conversation, Stoics encourage you to see them as an autonomous orchard. If illusions push you to overshadow them, Stoic empathy counters, "Let me truly hear their perspective, not override it." You remain free to disagree or set your boundary, but illusions do not push you to manipulate them into agreement. 5. Moral framing. Tie your daily interactions to virtue: honesty, courage, justice, temperance. If illusions of controlling them appear, you ask, does this align with justice, respecting their autonomy? Does it align with honesty, not hiding manipulative subtexts? Does it reflect courage, facing differences openly? That moral lens reveals illusions swiftly, letting you choose the orchard caretaker stance. Responsible, caring, but not overshadowing. Such Stoic discipline transforms your approach to conversation, conflict resolution, or persuasion. Freed from illusions, you see relationships not as fields to harvest compliance from, but as parallel orchards, each deserving sunlight. If your orchard thrives while overshadowing theirs, Illusions say, "That's success," but Stoics see it kills genuine synergy. Real synergy arises when illusions vanish, when each orchard can stand in reciprocal dignity. A final anecdote, the Stoic shift. Let me share a concluding story of how a friend, Callistus, overcame illusions of emotional control with Stoic clarity. He had long been in the habit of using mild guilt to get his partner's cooperation. "If you really cared about me, you'd watch this show with me." Or, "I guess I'm the only one who invests in us." Over time, she grew resentful, feeling cornered into decisions rather than freely choosing them. A crisis flared when she decided to take a solo trip to find creative inspiration, and he unleashed silent punishment upon her. She confronted him about how controlling it felt, and illusions made him defensive. "I'm just expressing disappointment," he insisted. Only after Stoic reflection, spurred by reading a passage from Seneca, did he realize he was overshadowing her orchard. He apologized sincerely, acknowledging illusions that he had the right to guilt her into compliance. Then he adopted daily Stoic journaling about every conversation. Am I letting illusions push me to overshadow her autonomy or override her feelings? Freed from illusions, he began expressing his preferences clearly, but never warping them with guilt. He replaced silent punishment with calm admissions of disappointment, open to hearing her side. Over months, their bond, once frayed, found renewed depth. She felt safer to be herself, and, ironically, that safety often led her to choose to spend more time with him willingly. Their orchard thrived because illusions no longer cast a manipulative shadow. This story distills Stoic virtue in practice. Emotional controlling behaviors might be unconscious, illusions convincing you it's normal or even beneficial. But Stoic reflection reveals them, prompting gentler, more respectful communication. If illusions shrivel, authenticity can bloom. This is how Stoicism fosters deeper mutual trust and a sense that each orchard stands tall, unsmothered. Even if disagreements or distinct preferences arise, illusions of forcing alignment no longer rule. Each day you meet illusions with reason. Illusions lose power. The orchard caretaker posture becomes second nature. Let me share a memory that has stayed with me for many years. Sitting at a simple wooden table in a quiet, lamp-lit room with a friend, who spoke in hushed tones of how he'd discovered, to his shock, that his helpful approach toward those close to him was rooted in a quiet hunger for control. He confessed he would never have called himself manipulative. He believed each nudge, each carefully placed guilt remark, was only a method to ensure that people did the right thing. Yet, after stumbling upon Stoic reflections on self-awareness and daily introspection, he recognized how illusions had blinded him to the line between encouragement and coercion. He recounted small interactions, a sigh when someone declined a request, a pointed mention of all he'd done for them. Subtle seeds that sprouted into a pattern of emotional overshadowing. His shock and subsequent resolve to change echoes the final steps in our journey. How to fuse everything we've learned about the 7 unseen signs you're emotionally controlling others into a coherent Stoic system that wards off illusions day by day. In our earlier segments, we illuminated illusions, fear, pride, overblown responsibility that fuel manipulative behaviors. We identified 7 distinct signs, each with real-life scenarios and the orchard caretaker metaphor explaining how illusions overshadow others' autonomy. Now, we unify these insights into a daily or weekly Stoic regimen that ensures illusions never quietly reclaim their hold. because illusions are never one and done. You might see them today and adjust your approach, only for them to resurface next week in a different guise. The orchard caretaker must remain vigilant in every season, checking for new pests or dryness, adjusting water, ensuring each orchard thrives freely. Likewise, if you aim to free your relationships from emotional control, you need a structured, repeated practice that fosters clarity and moral humility, so illusions can't creep back unannounced. Let us begin by recalling the orchard caretaker's posture: caring but never overshadowing. You want to interact with someone in a way that acknowledges their independent orchard, respecting their emotional domain. The caretaker can still set boundaries if the other orchard encroaches, but illusions do not push you to forcibly shape their orchard's layout. In practical Stoic terms, that means you can offer advice without overshadowing, voice disappointment without guilt-tripping, express needs without turning them into emotional hostages. If illusions push you to see every disagreement as a threat or every no as a personal slight, you risk controlling them rather than engaging them. Freed from illusions, you can handle tension calmly, focusing on reasoned dialogue rather than pressuring them to mirror your emotional state. So, how do we ensure that we remain mindful each day, never letting illusions seize the reins? The first pillar is a daily reflection routine, reminiscent of Marcus Aurelius's counsel. Each morning, you might take a few quiet moments to reaffirm that you cannot and should not control another's thoughts or feelings. You remind yourself that you can share perspective, but illusions about forcing compliance degrade trust. If illusions arise, like that subtle desire to guilt a friend into helping you, Stoic reflection says, ask them openly, accept their choice, do not overshadow them with emotional tactics. By setting that intention at dawn, you prime your mind to watch for illusions the moment you interact with others. The orchard caretaker doesn't wait for midday to see if dryness set in overnight. He starts early, scanning the leaves. You do the same with your relationships, acknowledging that illusions might lure you to overshadow them once your day gets rolling. For instance, if you plan to request a colleague's assistance, illusions might tempt you to slip in a guilt-laden remark if they hesitate. But having started your day with Stoic intention, you can catch yourself in real time, calmly stating, "If you're unable, I understand," instead of, "I guess that means no one else is stepping up." Second, a midday check helps you course correct while illusions are fresh. Suppose illusions had you overshadow a friend's viewpoint that morning with paternalistic advice. By midday, you reflect, did I ask if they wanted my advice first, or did I cut them off? Did illusions push me to overshadow their orchard's independence under the guise of being helpful? If the answer is yes, you can quickly apologize or clarify. I realize I might have interrupted or made you feel pressured. That wasn't my intention. This immediate correction is critical. Stoic practice is not about never erring, but about swiftly identifying illusions and rectifying them. The orchard caretaker, noticing partial dryness, quickly waters or adjusts the soil, not waiting for further decay. Over time, illusions find less space to propagate if you keep them on a short leash with midday Stoic reflection. Third, the evening reflection closes each day with a deeper Stoic inventory. Did illusions prompt me to scoreboard my emotional giving, or to punish my partner with silent treatment? Did I sense a controlling impulse to rewrite their emotional narrative as overreacting or insufficiently caring? If illusions were at play, Stoic acceptance says you name it calmly. No self-condemnation, but a vow to shift tomorrow. This cyclical approach gradually transforms your instincts. Illusions that once felt normal or beneficial become glaring red flags. The orchard caretaker's repeated diligence becomes second nature. You might be in conversation and realize mid-sentence that illusions want you to throw a guilt-laced phrase. Because illusions no longer lurk unseen, you catch yourself, adapt your tone, or choose a more respectful question. In effect, illusions lose their cloak of normalcy. That is the Stoic advantage. Persistent daily reflection cultivates an environment where illusions cannot remain hidden. In practical terms, you might keep a short journal or mentally replay interactions, focusing on where you might have overshadowed the other's orchard. If illusions led you to overshadow them with advice, you note it as advice overshadowing. If illusions sparked a subtle threat, if you don't do X, maybe we're done, you note it as conditional approach. Over weeks, patterns emerge. Maybe you rely heavily on guilt-laden remarks in times of stress. Now you see it as a repeated sign of illusions in your approach. Freed from illusions, you can plan alternative phrasing. Maybe, I feel disappointed that you're not available, but it's your call. That style acknowledges your feelings while respecting their domain. Over time, illusions get replaced by stoic, rational conversation. The orchard caretaker invests in a new routine of balanced care, discarding the old illusions-based approach. Yet illusions can roar back in big conflicts. Suppose you face a major disagreement, finances or a big life decision, and illusions say, now's the time for a firm ultimatum, or better manipulate them with guilt or fear. This is precisely when Stoic discipline matters most. Under stress, illusions claim you must overshadow them to get results. But Stoics remind you, overshadowing them might yield short-term compliance but fosters long-term resentment or even quiet sabotage. The orchard caretaker cannot preserve real growth by forcibly dominating the other orchard's branches. Instead, you gather your concerns rationally, present them openly, invite their viewpoint, and if illusions whisper, threaten them or degrade them if they disagree, you recall Stoic virtue. You'd prefer a mutually agreeable solution, but illusions do not justify undermining their autonomy. If a middle ground can't be found, Stoic acceptance might lead you to part ways or set boundaries, but illusions do not push you to emotional blackmail. That moral stance, repeated in big conflicts, cements your orchard caretaker identity, freed from illusions that overshadow the other orchard's rightful independence. Now consider illusions of, but I only do it because I care. That's the paternalistic angle. You might see them heading toward a questionable choice or a peer group you dislike. Illusions say, if I strongly guilt them, I can protect them. Stoic reflection counters. Sincere care does not justify overshadowing them. Offer reason, yes, but illusions that you alone know best fosters controlling behavior. Maybe you do see real dangers for them. A Stoic approach is to highlight your concerns plainly. I worry about X, I propose Y. Then accept they may still choose differently. If illusions lead you to overshadow them with emotional meltdown or condemnation, you might temporarily coerce their compliance, but that compliance is not free. Over time, they might resent you or break free abruptly. Freed from illusions, you see that each orchard stands under its own sun. You can advise, you can set your personal boundaries if their choices harm you, but illusions do not entitle you to forcibly direct their emotional states. Another dimension is illusions about small manipulations are harmless. Some think a little guilt or mild silent treatment is normal. Everyone does it. The orchard caretaker might say the same about skipping a day or two of watering. It's just small. Stoics caution that illusions accumulate. Over time, these small manipulations shape the other orchard's environment, stunting their freedom, breeding resentment or learned helplessness. Freed from illusions, you see that repeated little manipulations degrade trust just as a minor but constant weed problem eventually chokes the orchard. So, Stoic vigilance addresses even small controlling acts, not letting illusions excuse them as trivial. That unwavering discipline fosters a relationship climate where both parties feel safe to speak, disagree, or set boundaries. Each orchard thrives in the synergy of uncoerced collaboration. Finally, illusions might tell you Stoic reflection is too laborious for everyday life. Must I examine each conversation daily? It asks. But consider how illusions easily slip in if you fail consistent reflection. The orchard caretaker who stops daily checks wakes up to find half the orchard withered. Stoic discipline, while it requires effort, becomes second nature with time, and the payoff is immense. Fewer illusions, less drama, deeper trust, more genuine closeness. Freed from illusions, your relationships revolve around shared respect, moral honesty, and open exchange. People sense they can breathe around you, that you don't overshadow them with controlling emotional triggers. That environment fosters real loyalty, ironically more stable than illusions that forcibly keep them in line. Let me share a concluding anecdote that captures the transformation. A father, deeply invested in shaping his adult daughter's career path, often used emotional blackmail if she leaned toward a different field. He'd say, "You'll break my heart if you don't follow in our family's footsteps," or, "Think of all I sacrificed. Are you discarding my legacy?" He didn't see it as controlling. Illusions told him it was fatherly counsel. But Stoic reflection eventually revealed he was overshadowing her orchard, dictating her emotional climate with guilt-laden remarks. Upon acknowledging illusions, he changed tack. He openly expressed his wish that she consider the family tradition, but accepted that it's her life. He replaced guilt with sincere interest, letting her discuss her passions without overshadowing them. Freed from illusions, she felt safe to share her reasons, and though she chose a different path, their bond deepened because illusions of paternal control were cast aside. She recognized his Stoic approach. "I trust your autonomy. I love you regardless." And that respect overshadowed any disappointment he had. Their orchard synergy thrived instead of withering. That anecdote shows illusions can distort even paternal love, but Stoic discipline can rectify it. Similarly, in friendships, romantic ties, or workplaces, illusions about how we must ensure they follow the right path lead to controlling behaviors. Freed from illusions, you remain an ally, not a manipulator. Over time, illusions lose their disguises, replaced by Stoic humility. I control only my moral stance, not another's will. That, in essence, is how you unify everything we've discussed. You identify illusions fueling each of the 7 unseen signs, you correct them daily, and you foster an environment where people feel genuinely free to relate to you, trusting your sincerity rather than second-guessing hidden agendas. As we finalize our entire discourse, let me summarize the orchard caretaker stance once more. Each relationship is a separate orchard. Each person's orchard is their own domain. You can share knowledge, water with empathy, perhaps set fences if their orchard tries to overshadow yours, but illusions do not lead you to forcibly rearrange or overshadow their orchard for their own good. That kills synergy. Stoicism fosters reasoned collaboration. You remain open, you communicate mindfully, you stand ready to accept differences. Freed from illusions, controlling impulses that previously snuck under the banner of care or sincerity are recognized and released. That approach fosters a level of mutual respect that illusions can never produce, strengthening the orchard of relationship with authenticity, empathy, and moral clarity. Thus, we close, dear listener, on how a Stoic vantage can dissolve illusions behind emotional control. The steps are consistent: daily reflection, naming illusions, choosing reason and moral virtue in each conversation. Over time, illusions fade from your methods, replaced by calm sincerity. People will notice a gentler presence, a willingness to accept their decisions, an absence of guilt-laden or manipulative undertones. And, ironically, that fosters stronger bonds, for they sense they can approach you honestly. Freed from illusions, you become the orchard caretaker who nurtures growth without overshadowing. That's the crowning gift of Stoic discipline in relationships. A stable foundation where each orchard stands tall, overshadowed by no illusions or controlling impulses, free to flourish in genuine harmony. May these lessons guide your steps, ensuring illusions never again blur the line between caring guidance and quiet control. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.